It's time for Johnny and the Professor. Common sense in senseless times.
Freedom means free speech, not politically correct safe spaces. Freedom means religious freedom, whether you are Christian or Jew, Muslim or atheist. Whether you are gay or straight, the Bill of Rights protects the rights of all of us to live according to our conscience. Freedom means the right to keep and bear arms and to protect your family. And freedom means recognizing that our Constitution allows states to choose policies that reflect local values. Colorado might decide something different than Texas. New York, different than Iowa. That's the way it's supposed to be. Diversity. If not, what's the point of having states to begin with? Now, Hillary Clinton believes that government should make virtually every choice in your life. Education, healthcare, marriage, speech, all dictated out of Washington.
What you want to do is destroy this guy's life, hold this seat open, and hope you win in 2020. You've said that, not me. This is the most unethical sham since I've been in politics. And if you really wanted to know the truth, you sure as hell wouldn't have done what you've done to this guy. Boy, y'all want power. God, I hope you never get it. I hope the American people can see through this sham, that you knew about it and you held it. You're looking for a fair process, you came to the wrong town at the wrong time, my friend.
If you believe that caring for the poor is primarily the responsibility of the church and of individuals rather than bureaucrats, you are out of today's class.
Johnny and the Professor.
It's Johnny and the Professor.
Common sense for senseless times.
Where we talk about politics, pop culture, and potpourri.
So we're on to potpourri today.
Yeah, it's potpourri today.
Okay. I made the mistake accidentally of eating this stuff, not knowing what it was. So.
Oh, yeah, this is good trail mix.
So
a lot of things going on in the wacky world. Kavanaugh, the Kavanaugh thing is back.
Yeah, just when you thought it was safe to, turn on your news, along comes Brett Kavanaugh Part 2. I mean, this, of course, came from the New York Times. And they printed there's a book coming out, and they made a big deal editorial piece on it about Brett Kavanaugh accused of some sexual molestation when he's back in college. Mm-hmm. And, of course, the only problem with it is they left out the fact that the person who made the accusation is unwilling to confirm it today, and none of the people present remember that actually happened at all.
Again, there used to be this thing like innocent until proven guilty, but it seems like this is like a chess game. And every time they run out of things to accuse President Trump of, they bring something back like this. Am I off on that?
I think it's more of it's part of a chess game, but also I think there's part of it as in there's a fear involved in this. Brett Kavanaugh is, is Supreme Court Justice. Obviously, Trump has appointed 2 of them now. And the composition, those Supreme Court justices, of course, serve for life. So he has changed the composition of the court to a more conservative lean. And this strikes me as a power play on the left to try to intimidate judges. Right. That if you don't rule the way we want you to...
Which is not by the Constitution.
Again, Kavanaugh is pretty much like myself. I agree with him because he's a strict constitutionalist. And so is Clarence Thomas and other judges.
Conservatives, they want to uphold the Constitution.
Generally, as a rule, they do. I mean, there are more liberal individuals who uphold the Constitution also. Those are the ones who are liberals and not leftists. If you talk about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she's left. She wanders. She's been the big dissenting opinions, and the court has ruled sometimes 7-2.
Isn't she like 98?
Well, she's 80, I believe, okay. And she has health issues, and that's one of the things that's involved with Kavanaugh too. Is in a weird way, is her health is an issue that the people on the left are concerned about, because if she has to step down, Trump will appoint a new justice, right, and he's going to appoint a more conservative justice.
Now, I always thought that there should be a cutoff age for Supreme Court justices, like 73 or something. Maybe that's too young. Maybe that's too old still. What is your opinion?
Well, the problem with that is that the age of competency has changed dramatically even in the time of a lot of these people's lives. If you're talking about the 1940s, people when Social Security was created, it was created for the idea that 65, because people would die by 70. Now people are dying in their 80s. So I mean, where's that? As medical technology advances, the time people can live and stay active and have their mental faculties gets longer. So I mean, it's hard to make the call on that, because again, some people, and there's a World War II veteran that was just honored for his 110th birthday.
So should he be a Supreme Court justice?
Well, he'd probably do a better job than Ruth Bader Ginsburg. But that's
you are a toxic male.
I can't. What can I say? She's a horrible justice.
What makes her a horrible justice?
Because she rules on. She doesn't rule on law. She rules on interpretation of law. But the big argument between the left and the right on this is that a judge should rule on matters of law, not interpret the law to how they want it to be. And that's what's happening. The Constitution is that way. They look at the Constitution. The Constitution states you have a right to freedom of speech and freedom of the press and freedom of religion. And now they'll try to interpret that to mean what it means now. It's like I've had many arguments with people on the Second Amendment about militia. Mm-hmm. Well, a militia is like the National Guard. I go, no, a militia is a citizen army. You have to understand what the term meant when the Constitution was written, not what you want it to be now.
Right.
Because remember, when the Flintstones were on, the end of the song was, we'll have a gay-o time. Right. Well, that word has changed considerably in the 1960s when the Flintstones was on to now. So, I mean, that's the whole point is that you start to litigate from the bench. Is what you're doing. You're making judges are becoming lawmakers. A law will come out and someone will sue against it and the judge will rule against it on issues they wish to have it on. They're political rather than just simply arbitrators of the law.
Is that why they'll call back other similar cases because of Brown versus Smith? It ruled this way, and
they do that. That's what it is, because legal precedence is part of all the decision in law. I mean, you go back to what decisions is made in the past. Assuming those decisions are accurate, then you can always say if I want to sue you for something, and I say, well, according to Flintstone versus Rubble in 1978, you can't. The decision was made that you can't sue him because he's just too smart for you, or whatever it happens to be.
Oh, I totally understand.
I was going to say pretty, but I don't know if I can pull that one off. So anyway, we'll go with that.
Oh, boy. One thing that's been getting me, I'll talk to people, they'll always bring up that evil Trump and his horrible policies and how it's hurting Americans. And after decades of really bad foreign policy, mm-hmm. At least the way I'm observing things, and I could be wrong, I could be misguided. He's trying to fix things, like with this trade thing, where instead of just the Walton family getting richer on the Chinese manufactured goods that they sell us, that we buy, of course, he wants to make this whole trade thing a little more fair between the United States and to China. Instead of them not buying an equal amount of American-made goods, they buy our assets, our land, our businesses, our this and that, and so we're digging in this deeper hole. So he's trying to fix this, trying to make it better for us. Okay, but nobody wants to take one for the team in the meantime, while he's trying to hammer this out, the farmers. Oh, I ain't gonna vote for him again because I got to protect my business. Somebody's got. And I could be wrong on this, and it's easy for me to say sitting here. Someone's got to take one for the team, even though it's temporary, just to get through it, right? Everybody's been hurting after 8 years of Obama destructo, so everything that Trump said he was going to do, the things he wants to do, been met with resistance since before he gets into office. Yeah, is that fair? Is that American? You can make up all the excuses that you want, but is it American to throw a fit? It's childish. But since the Democrats own the media, they can make the president this horrible person. He could rescue a school bus full of school kids holding puppies, and they would still spin it as a bad thing. So
it's obviously animal abuse, and you traumatize the poor animals in the rescue.
So no matter what he's doing, it's bad.
I agree with you. As far as the issue as far as China is that obviously we run a deficit with China. China steals our intellectual property. They steal our technology, and we're supposed to consider them as to be buddies. They're still Red China.
Right.
They're still communist China.
Right.
All they did is they put on a capitalist suit because they realized that if they embrace certain elements of capitalism and control it through the Communist Party, which they do.
And wasn't it Democrat Jimmy Carter who brought them on board with the UN, which they weren't a part of?
No, the whole point is there had always been a separate factors. China was very isolationist in the past. It is the people that are concerned about the tariff issues. Farmers are concerned to some extent, but again, one of the things Trump has been doing is some of the money they're making from the tariffs on China, he's turning some of that back to help farmers if they're losing money, like soybean sales.
Oh, they don't tell you that.
Well, they don't, but that is still the case. People would complain if their prices of things went up. up. But since you haven't seen that happen, the people aren't complaining. The only ones who are worried about it are big business.
Mm-hmm.
It's greed. We talk, it's the greedy fat cats who will oppose Trump because he actually is trying to make a fair tariff system. They don't want a fair tariff system. They want something they can make money on.
Would the Walton family be included in that? When I mention the Walton family, I'm talking about the Walmart family.
Yeah, the Walmart. They would be in that category, of course, because they want the cheap goods from China so they can sell and make lots of money.
Right.
They don't want them to have to find new manufacturers. It'll cut on their profit margin. They won't be making the millions and millions they're making.
And paying their employees dirt wages.
And paying the least that they possibly can.
Right. So, am I valid in what I just said, or am I misguided?
I think that you're valid. I think Trump he looks at things like a businessman. First and foremost, you always have to realize that Trump is an entertainer, so he is a man who speaks a lot in hyperbole, and he will speak in what is more of a PR side of point of view. People say Trump lies. I go, Trump will lie about little stuff and tell the truth about everything important. And the other thing, he's a businessman. He looks at it and goes, China's ripping us off. He doesn't want to do business with someone who's ripping us off. Also, China's becoming more powerful. The richer they become, the greater threat they become. He knows their economy is weaker than ours, so if he can hurt their economy, which he should, because they're our enemy.
And they're trying to hurt ours.
They are. They're constantly doing things to harm our economy. They're stealing our technologies. They are not. People have this idea that China is our friend. China is not our friend. We have gotten to the point we can deal with them, but it doesn't have anything to do with. They would like to see the United States of America economically collapse because they've become the dominant economic power in the world.
Does the Soviet Union want the same thing, or Russia, or whatever they're called now?
They do to some extent. They want to see us, but they don't have the economic power to be a consideration in this anymore. They have military power that's a problem still. Right. But not economic.
Now, from what I've seen in interviews with their president and interviews with their people and their cabinets, and it seems like, and I could be wrong again, I'm not saying that what I'm saying is fact, but it sounds like...
But Johnny, you're never wrong.
Right. It sounds like he just wants a fair game, too. Well, if the United States can do this, why can't Russia? Why can't we? If the United States can stick their nose in everybody's business, why can't we? Well, if it's good for the goose, why isn't it good for the gander?
Every country has a right to do what's best in its own interest without actually going to war.
Right, and that's what it seems like he's saying. I don't understand Russian, but the subtext that I read from his interviews and things, and some are candid interviews with American reporters,
As far as Trump's opinion on Russia, I think Trump's of the opinion that Russia is a military threat, but economically, we can break their economy anytime we want, but if we break their economy, they sell their nuclear weapons to make money. And how much is Iran willing to pay for a 50-megaton warhead?
Right.
How many nations in the world? I mean, China would buy them. They have them too, but Russia has more. I mean, that's always the problem I have with Russia. Is a dangerous creature because if you push it too hard, its economy collapses. It'll end up it'll either strike out militarily to take area to get new territory to raise its economy, create a war to create an economy that works, or it will sell off its technology to people at an insanely high amount of money, which will destabilize the world in other ways.
Why can't we just try to make friends with them?
We should try to make friends with them. Again, go back to Ronald Reagan. He dealt with Gorbachev. Trust but verify.
Right.
You can make agreements. You assume that they're going to get the most out of an agreement they can, and you're going to try to get the most that you can. If you're in a position of authority, you can get a better deal. I mean, they need you more than you need them. Idea, and Russia does. Russia needs the economy from us more than they do other things. But yeah, we should be making friends, and that's the problem people have with Trump. Trump will flatter anybody he's making a deal with. It doesn't mean he likes them. You really think he likes that little? I'm trying to think of a word that can say on radio for Kim Jong.
Oh,
or, for good old Chairman Kim.
He's trying to make friends.
He's trying to make a friendly relationship with him. He's flattering him. He's coaxing. The guy has an ego. They literally think he's an ancestor of a god in North Korea.
Because that's what he tells them to think.
And there's part of what their family's been saying all along the line. I mean, the Japanese emperor is technically supposed to be the ancestor of a god, too.
Right. They're trying to change history here, too, in the United States.
The whole point is that, Kim is a lump. And we know that, but he's a dictator. And if you want to make peace with him, you're going to have to flatter his ego. You're going to have to tell him he can become a player on the world stage. But he's not a totally insane as far as I can tell, because he does realize that if he gives up his power too quickly, he dies. What will happen to him has happened to other people who have been in his administration. When they get weak, they're killed. And if they can just kill him and get rid of him and make a better deal, the military rises up, whatever. So you want to make friends with him. You want to keep on his good side and flatter him and get a good deal out of that and move him along, but don't trust him. Why would anyone think Donald Trump, who's been a businessman his whole life, who's dealt with mafia bosses building buildings, I'm sure, who's dealt with high-end financiers who were every bit as dirty as the mafia bosses, what do you think that he would trust anybody? You make your deal and you watch it carefully and you get the best out of it you can, and you get out of it if it gets bad for you, and you renegotiate. I mean, this strikes me. This isn't rocket science. This is how his mind works.
But he's a horrible person. He's a racist and blah 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 blah.
Well, again, that's because both the left and the right are afraid of him, because they don't think they can actually control him. The left has a big agenda for creating their perfect utopian world that they're looking at. The Bernie Sanders and people talking about this socialist,
which will lead to a dictatorship.
It will lead to a dictatorship. You cannot have all forms of socialism eventually becomes a dictatorship.
Right.
Because if there comes a point when I tell you, Johnny, I'm going to take 75% of your money now so I can give it to other people, you're probably not going to like that. And if enough Americans don't like that, they say no. And if they say no, the only way you can take it from them is with military.
Right. And they took your guns, so you can't do anything about it but just stand there and go, oh, I voted for you.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about it. Whenever you talk to anybody about guns, we talked a little on guns in passing. It's something that crossed on, and this is a good philosophy of how people's minds work. When you look at a person who wants to regulate guns, the first question is, what guns do you want to regulate? And they go, okay, well, I don't want assault weapons. Okay, well, is there such a thing as a non-assault weapon? Right. So what are you going to take? Does it have to be a large capacity rifle? Mm-hmm. Well, large capacity rifles only kill in gun shootings deaths are something like 5%.
Right.
The mass 80% of them are handguns. Is a handgun an assault weapon? I've never seen a non-assault weapon handgun.
They kill more people than assault weapons, so you think that they would...
80% of all deaths are with handguns. And the thing most people don't realize is that last statistics I read, it was about 14,000 people die of handgun homicides every year, and about 24,000 die of handgun suicides.
So more are suicides thing.
Much more people die. When they add together deaths from handguns, they get this number that comes out around 30,000 a year.
Right.
That's handguns, that's suicides, that's homicides, that's accidents.
Yeah.
And it also counts, for example, use of handguns in self-defense.
I bet you I can tell you who the suicides are.
Suicides with handguns, 98% are male.
Toxic male.
Yeah, they have to be men. Men shoot themselves. Right. It's very uncommon. Again,
that's not equal. I know. I'm sorry. We strayed off the Kavanaugh opening here. So should we bring it back? Okay. What's next in that part?
Well, I think it's pretty much over. The New York Times had to literally back off on its story, and they don't do that on content that they made mistakes. And
did they write a retraction?
They've come out in their op-ed. Remember, originally it was in the opinion pieces where they did all this.
Yeah, of course.
So in the editorial, but they have said that, and the reporters are blaming the editors, and the editors are blaming the reporters.
Right.
And of course they're both blaming Trump, but that's, because they always blame Trump. He's always in the loop.
It's always his fault. If he wasn't dividing all of us, it wouldn't be like this. There wouldn't be racism or hate.
Yeah, it's kind of a strange thing. Yeah, the whole Kavanaugh thing is the worst part about the Kavanaugh idea is the same thing that happened when he was being confirmed by the Senate. It's the elimination of due process. Mm-hmm. I accuse you, therefore you are guilty. I mean, that is 100% British common law. Civilization, Greek law. You can go all the way back to the Greeks. You don't have that. All forms of justice that are not just a king making a decision who's guilty and not. You always have the right to. You assume that you're not guilty. The requirement of the government to prove your guilt. Right. I mean, Kavanaugh had someone. Remember, accusation goes to investigation. Investigation goes to arrest. Arrest goes to indictment, and then conviction or not. You can go all the. Remember, people go all through the process and the end are found not guilty.
Right. It's that the burden of proof is on the accuser. And again, remember old Christine Blasey Ford, her old testimony in front of the Senate. Yet she couldn't remember the days. She couldn't give any names of any corroborating witnesses. She couldn't even. No one at the time who knew her had ever heard about this. Now, could something like this, could a victim block it out, or on the opposite end, And on the other side, this happened to me. I will always remember the time. I will remember what I was wearing and what I ate that day.
The answer is yes to both of yours.
Okay.
You have what's called hysterical amnesia. If people that are confronted with something beyond their ability to remember will block it out. But I honestly have a hard time believing that being at a party and being a little drunk and playing slap and tickle in a back room is so horrifying that you would block it out.
Right.
I mean, that's what it was. There wasn't any indication that there was actual sex. It was just
high school kids being high school kids?
High school kids being high school kids. Or, the whole situation was just weird. At the time, they wanted it to be so true because they wanted to take down Kavanaugh that there were people involved in it who were like Ford's long-term friend was named Leland Kieser. And he had been pressured by Ford's lawyers and everything for months to corroborate her story. And he says, I don't remember anything being said about that. He actually told, I would assume, the truth. Because what's weird about things, when you talk about people sometimes remember the events, but one of the things you have to understand about delusions is no one takes anything away from a delusion, they add to delusions. We'll use one that you can use for a strange harbor. If you and I walk into the woods and a Sasquatch walks up to us and says, hey guys, how's it going? If we come out of the woods and I say, there was a Sasquatch in the woods, and Johnny says, I didn't see a Sasquatch, you're literally, that is like less than 1% likely to happen. People, if they're more likely to see something they don't see and make it something else than to move something out of their memory entirely, unless they're hysterical amnesia, unless they blocked out the event entirely.
So I saw a pretty funny meme. Can I share it with you?
Sure.
TDS liberal. Trump should be in jail. The person. For what? His crimes. What crimes? Bad crimes. What kind of bad crimes? You know what crimes. No, I really don't. Please tell me what crimes you think Trump should be in jail for. You're stupid. All of them. All of what? His crimes. What crimes? You're a racist. Yeah, that pretty much, you always default down to something in that way. I have had the same opinion also when I ask people, and I go, this is not supposed to be rah-rah Donald Trump. Donald Trump can open his mouth and insert both feet on occasion. But it doesn't change the fact that, as far as I can tell, he went through a Mueller's investigation. They came back with no incidents of collusion, which is not the course. It was conspiracy. They did add conspiracy and collusion. No recommendations of any charges, and even in the matters of obstruction of justice, they made no recommendations. They made one of the weirdest things. Again, this is back to the Blasey Ford ideas. They said that they couldn't exonerate him from any wrongdoing, which no one can be exonerated. Right. That is against the idea of justice and the law. You have to be proved guilty. You can't be proved innocent. No one can be proved innocent. I mean, either you have the evidence to say that I did the crime or I didn't. I'm innocent to start with. And you have to prove that I'm guilty of something with the evidence, with the facts, with whatever you can find. And what I always think, people say, believe women, and I go, I don't believe women. I don't believe men.
Believe women, right? It's a little open-ended, huh? Just straight across the board? All of them? Every last one of them? What about the psychos? What about the ones that key your car and light your shit on fire because you didn't f***ing answer a text? What about them? Huh? How about you believe like 88%, and that last 12% that's out of their f***ing minds? I think that's a fair percentage, wouldn't you? No? Are you too afraid?
I believe evidence.
Lori Loughlin. Was it Lori that got the 19 days in jail or whatever?
Yes, you got 19 days in jail.
Now, did anybody from any colleges get jail time for accepting bribes, for saying, hey, if you pay me money, I will bump these kids off, or I will make room for your kids in my college to come here, even though they're not worthy, athletically or whatever. If you give me money, I'll make it happen. Any of those people get jail time?
I haven't heard anything about anyone getting jail time.
Why is that? I believe that's worse than what she did. Well, it's Johnny and the Professor coming up. Hey, can we talk some pop culture? I got some Star Wars. I got some Spider-Man Marvel, some updates. I got some other junk to throw in there.
So I don't know about any of it. Surprise me with it.
You're listening to Johnny and the Professor. Politics.
This is actually what makes this whole thing so comical.
Pop culture.
This is something that they're going to be prioritizing, and that is diversity. Now, this is stupid.
Common sense in senseless times. This is Johnny and the Professor. Common sense in senseless times.
Actually, by the way, I've been over here for a week, and as an American, I got to say something. You guys are pretty fat, too.
reiterating this idiotic notion, which is unfortunately put out there by professors and blue check mark leftists in public school systems, in which you've limited people's individuality, you've limited people's ability to relate to other individuals, to their color, their race, their gender, ethnic background, and so forth, which is bullcrap.
Contact the show at jpshowfm@gmail.com.
It's Johnny and the Professor, now to pop culture.
We're here to pop your culture.
Easy. That is the Professor at... No. Okay. We've talked in the past about Sony taking Spider-Man back.
Yes.
Putting him in the Venomverse, because Venom, the movie Venom, did so well at the box office. Didn't do so well with the critics, but, the critics aren't really critics nowadays.
No, they're paid for by the industries mostly.
But it seems like Sony is going to go head-to-head with Marvel at their own game. The MCU Phase 4, okay, you've seen the lineup. They're not really soliciting the same kind of excitement as earlier phases, right? Mm-hmm. Some are saying the MCU is peaked. Now, this is what Phase 4 for Marvel, the challenge is. Creating A-listers. When Marvel started, they didn't have A-listers like Spider-Man, X-Men, or Fantastic Four. When they started, they had the core roster of Avengers, ranging from B-listers to complete unknowns. They put them in front and center in well-crafted ways. But now Iron Man's dead, so's Black Widow, Thor's fat, unambitious, gave up his throne, Captain America's a senior citizen, Hulk is crippled. So they need Marvel's A-team, but can they do what they did before? Again, Spider-Man's gone. Daredevil and Punisher, they're out of commission for years. Deadpool, Fantastic Four, and X-Men are probably years away as well. What Marvel's offering in Phase 4 is a Black Widow prequel, which should have been by rights been released years ago, will not likely push her story forward in any meaningful way. Since
because she's dead.
She's dead.
Just backstory.
But maybe her sister, that rival Black Widow in the story, maybe she'll show up in Phase 4 now somehow, right? And kind of tie it in, who knows. Newcomers in the Eternals. Another newcomer, Shang-Chi, before Doctor Strange returns, and Thor's replaced by Natalie Portman as female Thor. On TV, She-Hulk's going to be joining the fray, probably to replace the crippled Hulk. Now, there's others coming. Miss Marvel, she will score woke points, while the story of the core Avengers will be continued by nobody's favorites: Hawkeye, Wanda, the Vision, Falcon, and the Winter Soldier. Then Loki and the What If. Both of those take place in other timelines. As far as we can tell, what's that gonna leave us? So if anyone can turn a bunch of B-listers into A-listers, it's Marvel, of course. As far as we know, Shang-Chi could be as big as Iron Man, the Eternals could be as big as the Guardians of the Galaxy, She-Hulk could be as big as the Hulk, or they could be biding time until Marvel brings out the more recognizable characters like X-Men, Fantastic Four, Deadpool. Because if Marvel Phase 4 doesn't work out well for Marvel like they hope it does, it could potentially work out really well for Sony. Once Venom became a smash hit, Spider-Man's MCU future was under threat. When Into the Spider-Verse won an Oscar for Best Animated Picture, Spider-Man's remaining days in the MCU, all but numbered. Sony, would take him back, place him into the Venomverse that they'd already established. Now, doing this, they hope to create their own Sony Marvel Cinematic Universe, and they hope people won't be able to tell the difference. Now, one theory out of all of the announced coming Marvel-themed movies, the one most are excited about is Venom 2, because you have Venom and Woody Harrelson as Carnage. They might throw Spider-Man into it, but some hope they don't. Now, Doctor Strange's Multiverse of Madness, it's all cool. It's supposed to be a horror flick. Okay, that's fine and great. With the Spider-Man license, Sony has access to 900 or so Marvel characters. About 850 of them are crap nobody's ever heard of or care less about, but even with the 50 or so worthwhile ones, they could have a very worthwhile cinematic universe on their own. Now, one on which on paper could be more appealing to fans of Spider-Man comics than anything currently coming in on the MCU. Sony could do it if the execution is right. Now, there's a problem, though. As you know, anything has potential, but potential doesn't help if you don't have the vision, the means, or the fan support. There's plenty of examples in Hollywood of this happening, not having all of the gears. Sony had elaborate plans for an elaborate Ghostbusters cinematic universe built around the all-female remake. That all changed when it bombed.
Because it stunk.
Right. Now, they already had plans and intentions of launching a new Spider-Man cinematic universe before. That also failed when, the Amazing Spider-Man 2, that's what they were going to do it off of. It did fine at the box office, but didn't fare too well with audiences and critics. Remember, all the potential in the world doesn't help if you don't have the vision, the means, and the public support. Now, when they first did this Spider-Man universe, the vision came from the Dream Team, like Amy Pascal, Alex Kurtzman, and 2 others, I forget. But the public didn't support a sample of this Dream Team's vision. As such, they weren't allocated the means to continue. That's when Spidey went to the MCU. But now that Spider-Man's back under the new Dream Team, which has Pascal and a couple others, these are the people that Marvel wanted locked up in a closet and kept away from Spider-Man Homecoming and Far From Home. Can this new Dream Team succeed where the previous iteration of it failed and beat Marvel at its own game in Phase 4? Now, if they're smart, they'll let someone else control the direction and not try to do it themselves, like the Dream Team, because they've had a bad track record. But let someone else handle it, take the credit themselves and bask in the glory and the greatness. But if they actually run it, Amy Pascal and the Dream Team, it's going to go back into a bad place. All of the supporting characters in the MCU Spider-Man movies, they were made into new characters. Like, that's why it wasn't Mary Jane Watson, it was MJ, who was a combination of Mary Jane Watson and Michelle Gonzalez.
She's from, I think, the more modern Spider-Man.
Right.
I haven't read
so
the new one.
Just like Ned Leeds was actually Gank Lee from the comics.
There was a Ned Leeds back in the old Spider-Man issues, but he was something to do with the Daily Bugle. They took the name and assigned a new character to it.
Right. And they did this so if Spider-Man left, they can't use those characters outside of the MCU. But Spider-Man can still, be in love with Mary Jane Watson and then, and have his buddy Ned Leeds.
It's a big right struggle back and forth. I'm listening to what you're saying about it. I go, ultimately, I think it turns in. There's plenty of characters in the Spider-Man story.
The Spider-Man in the Sony universe can't mention Tony Stark.
Right.
Can't talk about
mention
Thanos and the Avengers or any of that.
That's an interesting question, is that when you buy the rights to Spider-Man, is there crossover things? Did Spider-Man has Avengers in their Spider-Man issues? I mean, do they have any right to any of them, or can they use the Avengers? Probably not.
I'm told that they can't. They can't mention any of that stuff.
So they're going to have to use their entirely their own universe, which it gives a wonderful opportunity to build new characters if you want. There are secondary characters in Spider-Man's and issues that are really good characters that could be used. I don't think Venom's one of them.
Now, if they want to tie in to where they left off in Far From Home, they're going to have to do like a soft reboot somehow and just kind of deal with it.
Obviously, Mysterio's going back because he belongs to Sony also. If you're dealing with an idea of a multiverse, which again, Doctor Strange's multiverse idea, can't Sony just simply say Peter goes through and then something changes in the multiverse as he remembers it?
I don't know if he can mention multiverse. If they can mention multiverse.
If they couldn't mention multiverse, no one could because DC used it first.
Okay. So could they somehow tell the story of somehow like a snap and Spider-Man is here now, like this is the result of his snap, and it tore without mentioning Thanos, without mentioning the snap, without mentioning.
It could be something else entirely, though. It doesn't have anything to do with Thanos.
I'm saying if they want to tie in somehow.
Well, see, they did it to them. They did it to themselves easily. Mm-hmm. You could just simply say that Peter Parker, time is different. I mean, suddenly starts noticing. One day he wakes up and the world is entirely different. The time has somehow changed from what he remembered before because they messed with time. They created a divergent timeline. Mm-hmm. The only problem is, can they get permission to mention anything from the past? And I don't think Marvel's going to give them that unless they want to pay any money. I think I probably would just go, well, we're going to ignore this entirely and start over with Spider-Man.
Do you think, with the past track record of the old Dream Team and then this new Dream Team, which is basically the old Dream Team using the same missions, the same outline, their original plan for their Spidey universe before he went to the MCU, do you think that's going to tank again?
I think you need someone who's an overseer.
Yeah.
I mean, generally when you get a lot of artistic people around together, they're really good at artisticing, but they're not good at actually running things. You probably need someone...
Like a Feige?
Like a Feige. You need someone over the top of it who can say, okay, remember, this is our ultimate goal, and
Right.
we're moving it in this direction. Because I don't know if you've seen the animated Into the Multiverse.
Oh, Spider-Man, Spider-Verse,
Into
that
Spider-Verse
was good.
type of thing. And it was
That was fun.
good, and it was interesting. They had all these other ideas.
Yeah.
Now, you could do a lot with that. Because, I mean, they had a Spider-Man New York character who was really cool.
Yeah, and a Spider Pig.
And they had, that's Peter. His name is Peter Porker, the Amazing Spider-Ham.
Yeah, and they worked it out in there.
Right. And they had all these other characters that, if you have a multiple idea. Marvel also has a comic called, I think, Renegades, I believe. Mm-hmm. And that deals with a lot of alternate universe traveling. So if you have a multiverse, you can do with anything you want. And all you have to do is Spider-Man goes into another multiverse, and he runs into Iron Lord. He's a guy in battle armor that flies around. He's a rich industrialist whose name is
Iron Lord.
Whose name is Antonio Fiorini, whatever.
Right. And
you can build an Iron Man-like character. I mean, come on, Iron Man's not an original design character too. There have been battle armor characters. He's not the only one. I mean, there's always there's almost no new original comic book characters that were ever created. You have to get back to the 30s to find new characters.
This is why a lot of black and Asian comic book fans are getting upset at them announcing Black Magneto.
If you just follow the rhetoric of the individuals that are within the Marvel Cinematic Universe in terms of the shot callers, be it Feige, Victoria Alonso, and how these diversity efforts and such, this is the future. This is the way the world is, and the way certainly our studio's going to be run going forward. Because it brings about better stories. The more diverse the group of people making the movie is, the better the stories. Now, first of all, I've had it with Kevin Feige, but none of those have anything to do with anything. But I've long discussed this, how if you just pay attention to the rhetoric with the Captain Marvel promotion and going forward, that's why she was shoehorned. But also, just pay attention to that. You can see that they've been discussing this whole concept of diversity. This is why you're getting all the goofy characters that are popping up that I said will pop up, like Miss Marvel. There's a rumor about America Chavez popping up again, Jane Foster Store. Right, we're getting goofy characters nobody asked for, and certainly ones that are copies of them. But not just that. If you pay attention to the Eternals cast, that cast is tokenized almost top to bottom. They're going out of their way to try to cast people that are not the race of the characters in the comic books. So it's not even a stretch to say that they may tokenize Professor X and Magneto. I would say expect it. Yes, it's stupid. Sure, they could use other characters that are of that color that they already have in this big-ass encyclopedia that Marvel has with thousands and thousands upon thousands of characters in this book that they could just utilize that are of the race that they are. Of course, why do that when you can just tokenize the ones that exist?
That was YouTube's Young Rippa59. Very well versed in comics.
It's called cultural appropriation.
Okay.
I mean, that's what they're doing.
They shouldn't change these characters' races just to try to show how diverse they are, because there are African American characters in the Marvel universe. Just grab one of them or create a new one.
Well, I'll give you one from Spider-Man. His name is Hobie Johnson, if memory serves me. He's called the Prowler, and he's an African American character. He's been an antagonist of Spider-Man, almost like a Batman character. He had devices and gadgets and gizmos, gas charges, clinging gloves, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And he had originally designed it and he ended up being an antagonist, so he's a good guy. He'd be a character you could easily expand on because he ended up having to use his powers, kind of like Ant-Man idea that he got into bad people, so he had to use it in bad ways, but ultimately comes out as a hero in the end. Mm-hmm. And he's got a really cool costume, actually. There's a lot they can do. I mean, but that would require them to do something that is totally unheard of in most movie industries. You'd have to create something new.
Oh, well, that's the problem, because we're in a time where we can't create new things. We have to do reboots, redos, remakes.
Well, I mean, and the people ignore the ones that work. I mean, Spawn. You heard the comic Spawn?
Yeah.
It's an independent company one. That character is a black American. He's also like semi-dead and looks kind of almost lich-like, but he was originally black. Didn't matter to his character. See, that's the weird part about it is that does it really matter, depending on the character, what the character looks like, unless there's some reason that their background and race. I mean, if you build an African-American character who's from a rich African-American family in the United States and has all the advantages, Bruce Wayne done in black, if the Wayne family were black instead and very successful, does it matter? Because you know as well as I do, once a person gets rich enough, they don't become black or white, they become green. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean the Hulk, I mean they're the color of money.
One female writer from Marvel says that it's important to implement diversity in their stories, regardless of what the comics are, because we live in a world of diversity and we need to represent what's more like real life in our movies.
Okay, real life based on where? On the United States?
She didn't say.
Or are we talking South Africa?
She didn't say.
Are we talking United Arab Republic? I mean, where are we talking about? Okay, and that by that argument, then 20% of your characters, your heroes should be black. And about, about 1 in 10 should be Asian, because that's the population diversity in the United States. Your gay heroes would be less than 5%, which means you might have 1 in 20. Your trans characters would be 1 in 10,000. So they don't even, if Marvel has 10,000 characters, then they might have
they
one.
can make them.
And again, you can get around them that easily, because again, if you want to have a character, have a shapeshifter that is neither male nor female, and a truly androgynous creature that can be either male or female.
That's a true transgender right there.
That would be exactly what it would be. I mean, Deep Space Nine had Odo. They had almost like, I always thought it was strange that they had like male and female changelings, that they were puddles of silver goo that merged together. So I mean, it was weird. Obviously, it was more of a persona idea than an actual having sex organs idea.
You can't say something's weird or strange or odd or different, or they'll accuse you of hate and hate speech and being so full of hate.
You could have the Skrull could be an entirely transgender race.
Maybe I know you should be writing.
I should be writing. I've had many people tell me that before. I read way better, interesting comics than they do.
Abrams is trying to right the wrongs of The Last Jedi in The Last Skywalker. Now, I hear...
that is a monumental task.
Right. Even Rian Johnson kind of admits that the Star Wars story is in turmoil, but he won't admit
that
his part in doing
it.
Right. Even though he threw it in the trash, JJ's setup, that... Anyway, rumor has it that these reshoots going on like really soon, like going on right now, and we're months away from the release. Now, with Star Wars, their sequel past track record with reshoots this close to release date has spelled disaster. Now, I have a theory about this. I think JJ is the one intentionally leaking the script details, the outline, what's happening. And I think he's watching the reactions, saying, okay, they don't like that, or okay, I got a lot of people saying that's BS. Okay, he's doing these reshoots to try to accommodate. Now, I could be wrong. I was wrong once. But that's what I think. I think he's intentionally leaking these.
Play testing. For a video game, and releasing your beta edition to see what happens. You leak out information and you find out what the reaction is, and if the reaction is burn his house down, they may say, maybe I'm going along the wrong path. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. If I'm just diabolical enough that if I were in the situation worrying about the story, I'd leak just enough to people to find out what the reaction is, to find out whether I need to move to another country or not.
Well, conservatives would never burn your house down.
No, of course. Well, they're mostly on a whole law-abiding, but if I insult some, transgender person in a wheelchair with rickets, obviously, then I'm the worst person in the universe.
You're so toxic.
I know. What can I say? It's just, I'm an equal opportunity individual. I'm sorry, if you're a jackass, I don't care who and what you look like. You can be a jackass no matter who
You're an equal opportunity insulter?
That's the truth.
So that's all I really had.
Well, I mean, it is interesting. I'm hoping that they're going to make it better.
There's the Emperor is rumored to be in it. Yeah. Well, we had the Emperor's laugh and the Death Star crash and
all that. But didn't he go in the bottom of that engine and get blown to smithereens? I saw that in Ewoks Must Die movie.
He got thrown over. You remember the prequels? Jedi and I would assume Sith could jump, because you've seen Jedi jump and run fast and do all these acrobatics. Or even when they fall down something, you've seen Anakin all of a sudden throw his little wire thing to hook onto something before he falls down. Or
I guess I could see it because, again, Yoda looked old and decrepit, yet he jumps and flips around. The Emperor,
right.
If he actually fought, would he be flipping around like Luke or one of the other, Jedis? It is possible. When you looked at that movie, I got the impression that when he went down, there was a huge explosion. He would have to have been somehow got himself out of that vent.
Like Luke did in Empire when he fell down the shaft when Vader said, I'm your dad. Yeah. He drops and gets sucked down that garbage chute or whatever
Could he have moved himself out of the way somehow? And then why did it blow up? Then his cloak fell on it or something? Whatever.
Yeah, who knows?
And and then it blows up and all this energy comes up. you think that of course, I would say you think the Jedis would know that he didn't die, but then again, the Jedis from the
didn't know what was happening.
Yeah, well, a lot of times, I think it's funny that they have massive ability to see the future when it's convenient, and then they don't know that Palpatine's the Emperor.
Well, it was the shroud of the dark side cloaking everything. It was clouding their.
Wouldn't you literally know there's a shroud?
You got a point. People say, well, the Death Star blew up. Well, there was time. Luke had time to drag Vader to his ship
and get out.
So
somehow an emperor, for all I know, all you do is crawl himself into a
something.
Right, and again, maybe he got just out barely and got very badly injured. I'll give you another one. Maybe he's dead, and maybe they just simply. Now this would be interesting, and I would do this. They cloned him.
That was one of the stories in one of the video games. I think it's Battlefront 2, where the clone or his spirit or his clone, whatever. It's like inside one of those fish bowls, and you see his face, but then his body is kind of like a robot, but then the fishbowl head with his image in it. And he has this contingency plan in case this happens.
Well, we do know that Jedis can survive and interact with the physical world from these movies.
Right.
So their spirit can stay around. Yoda and Kenobi both appeared.
Right.
In movies more than we'd want to remember. So, I mean, if that's the case, then why couldn't the Emperor hang around? And if he can hang around, if you clone him a body, can he just move into the new body?
Right. I want Mace Windu. I want him to be alive, because I was watching Episode 3 the other weekend with my daughters, and I saw Anakin cut his arm off. Okay, he can survive that. He's getting shot with lightning, and, Luke was shot with lightning for longer than Mace Windu was, and he got shot out a window. But Mace Windu...
You don't see him actually die.
Right, you don't see him die, and a fall like that is similar to the jump he did in the Clone Wars,
right,
when they were all in that arena, and he jumps from the top where he's talking to Darth Tyrannus, and he jumps down, does some flips down in the arena. I mean, he could have just very easily went, okay, here I am on this ledge here now.
Right, just a little push. I mean, all you got to do is, it's on terminal velocity is 220 miles an hour. All you got to do is slow it down 100 miles an hour. He'll live through the fall.
I will take your word for it.
Okay, at terminal velocity.
Right.
But he didn't probably fall long to get, but anyway. I would too, because Mace Windu is a cool character.
Totally.
He's better in the Clone Wars animated than in that. That he was a really cool character.
Yeah, I never watched those really.
Oh, was it Gwendy, Terra, and Tarsky? Yeah, you should watch those. They're the best. They're probably the best Star Wars.
Now, the guy that did those, the guy that did the Clone Wars, he's the guy that's teaming up with...
Favreau.
Yeah, Jon Favreau. They're doing The Mandalorian. A lot of people are saying, you know what? Filoni should have did the sequels, because he has a passion and love. He worked alongside Lucas. Lucas, he used to dress up in cosplay before he worked at Lucasfilm, and he's the guy that should have did these, because he cares about it. These people doing this garbage, they don't care about Star Wars.
No, they don't at all. It's just a vehicle for their fame, so they can go on to other pictures.
Right, or their agenda. Kathleen Kennedy, excuse me.
So you're right, and that would be. I did not know that. And if that's the case, the one who did Mandalorian did it, I will bet you. I wouldn't heavily, but I'd bet $5 on it that it's probably going to be good. Because Favreau, on a whole, I've been happy with his work, and it's the same person that was involved in the animated Clone Wars.
Yep.
All of those are good.
Right.
I mean, I watched them from beginning to end. Even the Anakin and Amidala, even her stuff, their stuff is interesting in it.
Right.
And every time they came on screen in the first 3 movies, I almost slipped into a coma every time.
I did watch the part, spoiler alert, where Obi-Wan finally kills Darth Maul.
Yes, I've seen that.
That was a touching kind of moment.
Yeah, it was. So is there anything else in pop culture that needs to pop at this point?
I think we did all the popping we had time for today.
Okay.
They don't pay us for a 2-hour show yet.
Not yet. We'll see about that in the future.
Right.
I guess that's enough for us for today. We'll wrap it up with the fact that we now have a Johnny and the Professor YouTube channel, which you can go look at. All of our audios are posted there. Of course, I have my own YouTube channel, which is Arena of History. And, of course, for local people, I do write articles for the Senior Sunset Times.
This has been Johnny and the Professor. Politics.
This is actually what makes this whole thing so comical.
Pop culture.
This is something that they're going to be prioritizing, and that is diversity. Now, this is stupid.
Common sense in senseless times.